There's something peculiar about the way we use 5 to count. When we need to keep track of something, the hand appears on its own. 1 finger, 2, 3, 4, and on the 5th, the hand closes. It's such an old and automatic gesture that we barely notice it anymore. But there it is, written into the body, into habit, into the mark of a line crossing 4 others. 5. A number the body knows before the mind can name it. That's not a coincidence. 5 has a very direct relationship with the physical, the sensory, the concrete experience of being alive. 5 fingers on each hand, 5 senses to perceive the world. Sight, hearing, smell, touch, taste. 5 points on the shape we draw when we think of a star. 5 shows up in the human body with a consistency that no symbolic tradition has ever ignored. Not because it's magic, but because the body is our first instrument of contact with reality. And 5 is, in many ways, the number of contact. To understand what 5 represents symbolically, it helps to look at where it comes from, at least in conceptual terms. Earlier in this exploration, we passed through 1 as origin, 2 as duality, 3 as synthesis, and 4 as structure. 4 can be thought of as the solid foundation. 4 walls, 4 cardinal directions, 4 corners of a stable shape. It's the number of firm ground, of organization, of something with clear form and defined limits. Then 5 arrives, and everything shifts. If 4 is the well-built house, 5 is the door that opens. Not to destroy the house, but to step outside, to go see what's out there, to move, to discover, to stumble a little, to come back, or not come back at all. 5 introduces something 4 never had: variation, movement, the possibility that things don't always stay the same. And with that, everything becomes more uncertain, more alive, more complex. In many symbolic traditions, 5 is associated with change as an active force. Not the kind of change that happens in the background while you wait, but the change you seek out, provoke, or bring about through a different decision. Someone who leaves a stable job to try something new. A move to another city without having everything figured out. An unexpected conversation that redirects the entire course of a week. A trip that begins without a fixed itinerary. These situations, different as they are, share something in common. They all involve letting go of something familiar in order to enter something that doesn't yet have a shape. That's movement in the sense of 5. What's interesting is that 5 isn't simply the number of chaos or the dismantling of what's been built. One way to read it is as the number that reminds us that structure, on its own, is never enough, that the map is not the territory, that some things can only be understood by living them, not by planning them. Some people can read 100 books about swimming and still not know how to swim. Others learn in the water. 5 tends to be associated with that second kind of knowledge, the kind that comes from direct experience, from trying, from failing, from correcting course in real time. It's not an inferior kind of knowledge. It's a different one. And in many cases, it's the only kind that truly changes something. That connects 5 to an idea that might sound simple but carries real depth. Freedom. Not freedom as the absence of everything, but freedom understood as the capacity for movement. The possibility of choosing a path different from the one already laid out. In that sense, 5 can be thought of as the number that interrupts the automatic, the schedule that suddenly changes, the alternate route, the plan B that turns out to be better than the original, the fork in the road that forces a choice. This dimension of 5 also has a very concrete physical side. Movement isn't just a metaphor. The body that walks, that explores, that tries, that feels, that perceives, is performing a function deeply connected to the symbolic idea of five. The five senses aren't just channels of information, they're the instruments through which the world enters us. Seeing something on a screen is not the same as seeing it in person. Hearing a description of the ocean is not the same as hearing the waves. Five, in a certain way, insists on that difference. It insists that there are dimensions of reality that can only be grasped when the body is present, in contact, actually there. No number has just one face, and five, with all its energy of movement and openness, carries its own tensions. The same force that makes someone curious, adaptable, and open to change can become, in excess, pure dispersion. The person who starts many things and finishes none. The one who needs constant variety to the point that no project lasts long enough to mature. The one who changes direction so often that they never quite arrive anywhere in particular. This isn't a moral judgment. It's a symbolic tension inherent to what five represents. Just as one can become isolation if it never finds connection, or four can become rigidity if it refuses to move, five can become inconsistency if movement turns into an end in itself. Openness that never finds a resting point can wear itself out. Freedom that doesn't engage with any form of commitment can end up weightless, floating without grounding. One way to think about five in balance is as adaptation, not the restlessness of someone who changes because they don't know what they want, but the flexibility of someone who knows how to respond when circumstances shift. There's a significant difference between someone who quits every time things get difficult and someone who adjusts course when the original map no longer matches the terrain. That second kind of movement is what five, in its richest reading, can represent. The intelligence of knowing when to keep going, when to stop, and when to turn. This also shows up in concrete cultural expressions. In many ancient civilizations, five was the number associated with the complete human being. 4 limbs plus the head, forming a figure that can orient itself in every direction. The famous drawing of the Vitruvian Man, inscribed inside a circle and a square, shows exactly that. A figure with 5 points, occupying space, extending outward, looking in all directions. It's not a coincidence that image carries such power. It visually captures the idea that 5 implies expansion into the surrounding world, openness to the exterior, active presence in space. In other traditions, the pentagram, the 5-pointed figure, was used as a symbol of balance between material elements and the spirit that animates them. Regardless of the religious interpretation each culture assigned to it, what stands out is the recurrence of the same intuition. 5 as the number that connects the physical with something beyond it, the bodily with the dynamic, the concrete with the changing. Returning to the everyday, 5 also appears in how we organize time and movement. 5 working days in the standard week, with 2 days of variation or rest. 5 acts in classical dramatic structures. 5 stages in certain models of psychological change. 5 phases in cycles of transformation that various cultures describe in different ways, but with a similar underlying logic. It's not that 5 is the right number for all of that. It's that something in its structure, in its position between 4 and 6, makes it a natural place to mark the moment when something shifts, when one phase gives way to another. There's something in 5 that resists stillness, not because stillness is bad, but because 5 represents the impulse we need to avoid being paralyzed when the world changes around us. And the world always changes. What varies is whether we're able to move with it, or whether we stay locked into a framework that no longer works. As a symbol, 5 can be read as the reminder not to confuse stability with immobility, to understand that sustaining something valuable often requires adjusting, not freezing in place. In the end, 5 is not the number that promises everything will work out if you just take the leap. It's also not the number that justifies every impulsive change, as though freedom were the same thing as recklessness. It's something more precise and more useful than either of those. The number that reminds us that some forms of knowledge don't fit inside a plan, that some lessons only happen in motion, that some versions of ourselves only emerge when we leave the familiar and allow something new to challenge us. Not as destiny, as possibility. One that almost always requires taking a step before knowing exactly where it leads.